Hey folks, my name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist and Pro Trader at InTheMoneyStocks.com and VerifiedInvestingCrypto.com. So in this video, I want to discuss the similarities between what happened in the 1920s into the Great Depression and what we've seen in the stock market. I want to look at similarities, interesting little confluences inside the charts, as well as other things. And it's really mind-boggling and amazing to me. And this is something I hope everyone looks into, is looking back in history. You can learn so much about the future by looking at history. And the reason that is because generally people always are the same. Greed and fear, emotion drives the market. Doesn't matter if it's in the 1920s, doesn't matter if it's in the 2000s. Heck, it doesn't matter if you look back at the tulip mania, I think it was in the 1500s. It's the same. Human nature doesn't change. So things that occurred 100, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago will repeat again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a quick look at the charts and go over the chart of the S&P. So what you see here very, very clearly, look at this, right? So we have this up move, which was the late 90s. This was the dot-com move up, and then this was the dot-com collapse in the S&P 500. Then we had the move up into the 2017 high. You can see a pretty crystal clear double top there, and then the collapse. Now, what we know is that there was massive stimulus that came in this period here, and we saw the market move to the upside here. So again, this is the recent run. I'm not showing the recent small pullback in the S&P off of this run for obvious sake. You'll understand in just a second. But look at this move to the upside here, folks, that ultimately took place. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to flip over to the Dow chart. And you might say, well, why the Dow and the S&P? Well, the S&P is the common index of today, right? So if you go back to the 1900s, early 1900s, you actually have the Dow. That was the main index back then. So you have to compare apples to apples in that respect. All right. So what I want to do now is let's take a look at this, right? And what you can see here is look at the similarities in what happened here. Okay. All right, so this was, again, starting in 1915, and then the pullback, and then the up move, and then the pullback, and then look at the run the market went on. Eerily similar on the Dow Jones Industrial Average to what we have seen today. Now, let's talk about some of the similarities in factors that have gone on here, right? So basically, in the early 1920s or so, coming into that period, what did we have going on that helped this boom? Number one, the introduction of electricity. Now, interestingly enough, what we saw in kind of that 1915, 1920 period, when you were seeing that kind of up move, down move, up move, down move, the introduction of electricity, and obviously cars became much more available to people as well. Now, interestingly enough, in the late 90s, early 2000s, what did we see? We saw the introduction of the internet. And what we saw is how the introduction of electricity, it increased the opportunities for people to go out and about, to go to shops after dark. It was okay. You could drive to further places. It increased consumer spending. And in the 20s, all right, the 1920s, one of the biggest things, it was called the Roaring 20s. It was people getting out, the consumer getting out and shopping. All right, it was spending money. It was a consumer. It was the beginning of the consumer-led economy. Now, what's fascinating is that what happened in the late 90s to 2000s and all the way up to where we are now. And the answer is that we started to get consumer spending to go to the next level. Now, you might say, well, why? Well, number one, we know the Fed was stimulating, right? So it was stimulation there. But also the internet opened up a whole new world of shopping. Amazon, Google, all of these places where you didn't have to even go out of your house now. You could just go online and spend money, much different than pre-1995 or so. And really in 95, let's be fair, the internet, I think, was in a total of like 10% of households. Really by the early 2000s, it started to permeate in most households in the US and around, well, not around the globe yet, obviously, but more and more around the globe. So you see how the similarities, how you have this technology that's introduced, that's game changing in both the early kind of the mid 1910, 1915, 1920s with the car, with electricity, and then here with the internet. going into this recent period that stimulated consumer spending more and more. And I think that's so important to understand, because it really does drive the reasoning behind why we see charts like this. And then also that same pattern. All right, this again is the pre-roaring 20s move. And here's your roaring 20s into, by the way, if we zoom out here or go out, look at the economic collapse. And then if we flip back to the S&P 500, look at that same up-down move and look at the move. And guess what? If we go back here, we have just started the decline, in my opinion. All right, so again, this is eerie, but what it potentially speaks to is some very big downside in the market over the next, 10 years or so in reality. And again, it would not shock me, and I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not going to make this as an official call, but in a worst case scenario, you know where we could go? We could go all the way back and retest the scene of the crime on the S&P 500 at around 1,600. And that, to me, my friends, is something that we all have to be aware of. We have to be cognizant of, because how do we protect ourselves? Yes, we can go short. Yes, we can go long. But I'll tell you, swing trading is of the utmost importance. Learning how to be disciplined is of the utmost importance. And also learning human psychology, understand why markets work. I'll tell you, this period, if you look at the market all the way up to basically 2021, it was a long-term investors market, right? The Fed was involved from 2009, the lows there. It was a long-term investors. You just bought and hold. You bought every pullback. It's different now. Swing traders are going to emerge as the ones that are going to make the most amount of money over the next 5 to 10 years. I've gone on record before saying I don't think the S&P makes a new all-time high, probably for at least 10 years, maybe 15 years out. A lot of doubters out there about that call. That's what they said about when Bitcoin was at 69,000 and I said it was going to 20,000. That's what they said when oil was at $130 a barrel earlier in 2022, and I said it was going down sharply. Here we are. We know the results. The reason why I'm good at these calls is because I study history and human psychology, and it changes the game. And by the way, I will just mention this. The Winning Trader series is the web series, the educational series I put out. 20 years of information there, but it's 20 hours of information in 3 different segments. And again, you can find it at verifiedinvestingeducation.com. Check it out, guys. It is game changing. All right. The amount of money that can be generated from learning how to read psychology, being personally disciplined to not do stupid things like we all do sometimes. It changes the game. Then learn the secrets of the charts. It's all there. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. I will continue to bring you these interesting videos. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care.